Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the Commercial Vehicle Business Podcast. No matter the time of day or where you're joining us from, we thank you for being here. I'm your host, Steve Henning, and today I'm excited to introduce Michael Jones, the Managing Director at Routeway 360. Michael, thanks for spending a few minutes with us today.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's always great chatting with you all.
Well, we appreciate that as well. So let's just dive right in. For those that don't know much about Routeway 360, maybe we can start there and you can tell us a little about the company, maybe the mission and anything else you think is appropriate to kick it off with.
Absolutely. So Routeway 360, we're really a one-stop shop services organization for independent distributors. Our goal is to essentially simplify the path towards and the day-to-day business of operating a distributorship. So we do this by providing a full suite of specialized services tailored towards the industry, and that really impacts every step of the distributor lifecycle. In our early days, we were initially solely a commercial insurance brokerage in this niche, but over time, in an effort to support our clients in more ways, we've expanded these service offerings to really be a better business partner and ultimately do our part in elevating the industry. So we've got 10 services now and, continue to accelerate timelines, and it's been a great journey. Probably worth actually clarifying for those that don't know, a distributor in the context of Routeway 360, these are folks who essentially operate routes. They're transporting goods from, let's call it a manufacturing facility to their end destination, whether that's a grocery store, a market, but these folks typically own the exclusive rights to distribute in those locations. So in other words, they own their own business and they own these routes, the bandwidth between the facility and its end destination.
Makes sense. And you used a word a minute ago that I really like, and that is partner. I appreciate when we speak with people from different organizations and they don't refer to their customers necessarily as customers, but it's partners, and we're looking for ways to help our partners be more successful in their business. So I love that approach. I think that's a fantastic way to look at things.
Yeah, I agree. And, in our world of, I'll call it marketplaces, you almost have different types of partners. You've got your client partners, you've got your business partners. And so all orchestrated together, it works quite well.
It does. And I think that's maybe a little bit indicative of the ecosystem that we, I guess, work and play in, is that, if everybody approaches it from a partnership mindset and let me look at things from a viewpoint of what I can do to help others be successful, it kind of comes back full circle. So it seems like a good strategy to me.
Totally. I mean, the industry is small at the end of the day. Everyone is kind of hand in hand, like everyone's working together. So, it's not without partnership.
Absolutely. Okay. So speaking of partnerships, so I'm aware that fairly recently you launched, I think it was the Find a Truck, I'll call it feature. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but the feature on the portal, and the partnership was with Comvoy. And I think it was very much what we just talked about. The thought was, what can we do to help our partners be more successful? So can you talk a little bit about that? Perhaps, how you selected Comvoy, and what is the benefit to your distributors from that relationship?
Absolutely. We can talk about all these services, but at the core, you don't really have a traditional distributorship without a truck. So finding a truck was not only critical to our client partners, but critical for our business and the services that revolves around it. Comvoy has been a great solution for us and the independent distributor industry at large, I would say. For one, the legacy way of sourcing work trucks is quite archaic when you think about it. There's a lot of hoops and ladders, time, conversations required just to really get a sense of inventory and what you're looking for. So Comvoy does a great job in essentially sourcing work trucks through this digital experience. And what I like to say is allowing the shopping to happen up front. So the parameters that you're choosing, you're sort of shopping before you're really getting, too far down the rabbit hole. I think for our business who serve clients in 48 states, the nationwide aspect of Comvoy is also fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you guys have over 200,000 or so in vehicles and inventory.
Yeah, I think you're right. Last number I saw was, I think it was close to 230,000 actually.
Yeah. So, having that kind of access for the clients that work with us, to make it really easy for them to find a truck in their locations is a huge win. There are very few ways of sourcing in one place like that. So our distributors, have challenges outside of sourcing that Comvoy also tends to solve. We can get into, but we're just stoked that we have a place that we feel trusted, that we know will work every time, and that no matter where they are, they have a place to find a truck, whether that's being delivered to them or whether they're finding it down the street.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, let's get into what you just talked about. Like, are there, some unique challenges when it comes to finding a truck that you think, hey, this helps address those?
Certainly. For one, access is a big one, and I've sort of touched on it, but being, in some locations being isolated, the integrated vehicle transport feature is great. Having that delivered is a huge win for those that need it. I think also having the flexibility between new and used inventory. Some folks have a strong preference one way or the other, and it's great to have both. Sometimes the challenges they deal with are they're only finding dealers with XYZ inventory, and they can't find the opposite. So
sure,
that's definitely a feature. And I'd say financing. The built-in pre-approval. Well, I'll say pre-approval, but the payment estimates that comes with is a real big one. We have folks calling in all the time just looking for financing as a standalone solution or a way to find a better rate, and outside of whether the vehicle they've purchased. So having a place kind of in a similar vein, a one-stop shop to get all of that done, or at least a preliminary review, is huge. So challenges with access, challenges with the inventory types, challenges with financing solutions. Comvoy really comes in and supports them across that journey. So,
well, that's pretty cool. I guess I hadn't thought enough about the other elements, financing being one and transport being another that you mentioned. I live in a fairly large city, so it's not specifically an issue of, there's plenty of dealerships. If I need to go source a vehicle, I can probably do that. But if you're in a remote location, that presents a whole unique challenge, I believe.
It really does. And, in other areas of our business, for example, in a lot of these distributors have to stand up, let's say, a business bank account. And for those that don't have regional banks in their area, we rolled out a digital banking solution so they could get onboarded without having to find a bank. So in these rural areas, tertiary from major metropolitans, having a solution like that really helps.
Well, you just touched on it again when you talked about what you rolled out. That's an example of being a great partner. You look at what the people that you serve need, and okay, let's see if we can come up with a solution to help with that. So that's, gosh, I love it. Absolutely love it.
You got to hold us back. Sometimes we want to do too much.
Well, there is this thing called crawl, walk, run sometimes, I suppose, but there's nothing wrong with having grandiose plans as long as you can execute as well. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
I think that execution risk is a big one that people don't always think about, but a big reason why we want to work with Comvoy and why we partner with Comvoy is we don't want to be a professional in truck marketplaces. You guys have your core capability. You're the best at what you do. So to the extent we can work with you, and work, bring those capabilities to our clients, everyone's better off. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Know your core. The old saying, I guess, what is it? Jack of all trades, master of none. Sometimes applies. Do what you're good at and find somebody else who's good at something you're not and partner with them. That's a good way to go. Yeah. All right. I'm curious, at the top, you mentioned a little bit about, here's the definition of distributors and what Routeway does and so forth. Are there specific industries that really dominate the distributorship, or is it spread across a variety?
So there's definitely variety. The type of distributorship that I would say makes up 60 to 70% of the folks we serve are these DSD routes, so direct store delivery.
Mhm.
Our biggest industries are food and beverage. I'd say also tool dealers, these mobile tool dealers as well. You'll see them out
Yeah.
there, Macco, Mac Tools.
Hmm.
And within food and beverage, it's quite a big umbrella, but you've got bread, snack, meats, poultry. So you have the gamut of, let's call it, refrigerated trucks, step vans, all sorts of vehicles that are sort of custom for the type of goods that they're delivering.
Hmm.
But I would say for us, we focus really on food and beverage, tools. We're expanding strategically where it makes sense. Ultimately, we're still in that logistics and distribution space, but
Sure.
I'd say the brands where you have a strong DSD, where you're selling routes or the rights to those distributorships and
Hmm.
for the clients we serve, they tend to be, I'd say 1 to 5 unit fleets.
Yeah.
We do, we have some up to 10, 15. Those are where they're aggregating multiple routes in certain areas. But I'd
Right.
say the owners are typically pretty involved. Small to mid-size fleets to that
Okay.
extent. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, then I would think for those in particular, Convoy has got to be a pretty good resource because you may not have the, I don't know, we'll call it parent organization that says, here's, we have a good source for you for vehicles. So kind of solves the problem.
And to the extent, a great feature that we worked on with Comvoy was let's in this portal filter down to the 6 types of vehicles based on the specific niches that we know about. So
Yeah.
without the guidance, these folks can come in and say, oh, I need this type of vehicle. And you sort of pre-filter the whole Comvoy experience. So we're really customizing it to this certain type of distributorship. Like there's like these smaller where they're
Yeah.
sort of on their own making those decisions. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, remove the clutter, right? Why make it difficult to find it? We've already taken step 1 for you.
Yeah.
That really, interestingly enough, I guess leads to my last question, and that may have just answered it. But as we were wrapping up, one of my biggest thoughts as we finish is what are some of the key takeaways or things that you've learned so far from this partnership that you realize, gosh, this really helped? Or are there other things that you're thinking, down the road? You talked a little bit about Routeway liking to continue to expand and look at what else you can provide. Are there other thoughts going forward?
So I think, we've really taken a hard look at how to close the gap when it comes to time to close. I think for the new distributors that we serve, in many ways, it's their first distributorship. They've got a ton of upfront legwork. They're
Mm-hmm.
purchasing the route in parallel, finding financing for the route. They're incorporating their business, setting up their bank, finding their insurance, finding a truck. And then once they get started, they got payroll, tax, accounting. They want
Yeah.
route for the holidays, and the list goes on. So, as you can imagine, this becomes quite a headache, especially as you start to involve more vendors that aren't
Sure.
necessarily part of the circle. So, I think a few things we think about as we look forward is how do we close the gap and maybe take something that's going from 4 to 6 months to close on a distributorship down to maybe 3 to 4 weeks.
Wow.
For the banking process, we've now got it down to we can stand up a new business bank account in 30 minutes. And with Comvoy, while we're sort of in the first inning, I would say the first couple months in our partnership,
Mm-hmm.
I do see timelines going from a few weeks to finding a truck to potentially, just a few days. So there's a lot of opportunity in reducing the timelines, getting people started in their businesses quickly. And I'd say also on the compliance end, for those that, may not know, when you're distributing for these certain brand companies, they have very much brand requirements, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's the, type of insurance that you carry and
Right.
the list goes on. So we also tend to remove the risk by integrating everything into one because we know who they're delivering for, what these requirements are. And so from a compliance angle, we're also trying to solve from there. So again, when I look forward, it's really how do we help new distributors get started quicker? How do we help existing distributors more effectively or more efficiently run their business? And it's through, partnerships like Comvoy, where we step back, we think digital, and we try to modernize maybe a slightly archaic way of, a traditional industry. So.
Well, I would have to think that anybody checking out this podcast, business owner in particular, their ears perk up a little bit when they talk about things like mitigating risk, improving efficiencies, reducing timelines. Time, clearly there's a cost to it. So if you can reduce it, you reduce the cost and the expense. So all good things. That's a good story. I like where you're headed and the thoughts you presented. So Michael, thanks so much for spending a few minutes with us today, sharing a little bit about Routeway 360 and the partnership with Comvoy. And maybe we can chat again in a few months and see where things have gone and if there's new takeaways and new lessons that have been learned.
Absolutely. Always happy to talk. Thanks for having me, Steve.
You bet. Thanks so much.
All right.